Imagine this. You spend nearly a decade working your way up. Every dollar saved, every moment sacrificed, every quiet night spent alone instead of out partying, all for one goal: building your dream home. A quiet beach house overlooking the water in Santa Barbara, California. Not just a house, a symbol of every ounce of grit and self-control you ever had. A place where I could finally breathe after years spent helping others around the world. And then one day, it's gone. Sold. Behind my back. No warning, no discussion, not by a stranger, not by some scammer off the internet, but by my own flesh and blood, my parents, the people who raised me, the people I trusted, the people who looked me in the eye and told me they were proud of me. They sold my beach house while I was out on a mission in Sudan, saving lives. And why? To pay off my younger brother Jason's gambling debts. And when I got the email from my father that said, "You didn't need it anyway, right?" Something inside me broke. But what they didn't know was, I didn't just own the house. I owned more than they could imagine. I had prepared for this moment years ago, and when the real estate agent called them, everything fell apart. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from the very people who were supposed to protect you, hit that subscribe button. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we design justice. Stay with me. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 34 years old and I live, or used to live, in Santa Barbara, California. I work in humanitarian logistics, which is just a complicated way of saying I help people in crisis zones get food, shelter, and clean water when everything around them is falling apart. I've spent the last decade of my life moving between war zones, disaster sites, and refugee camps. Sudan, Yemen, Haiti, you name it. I've slept in tents, eaten from ration packs, and witnessed pain most people only see on news headlines. But through all that, there was one thing that kept me grounded. One thing that made every flight worth it: my beach house near Montecito. It wasn't just a house, it was mine. I built it from the ground up, not just financially, but emotionally. I poured every bonus, every promotion, every bit of overtime into it. The ocean view, the wooden deck, the silent mornings where all you could hear were waves crashing against the rocks. That house was peace. My peace. It stood as a reward for all the years I spent in chaos. When you spend so much time around people who've lost everything, you learn to value quiet, still places. That house was sacred to me, not because it was expensive or beautiful, but because it was proof that I had created something good in the middle of a world that was constantly breaking apart. I'm a pretty simple man. I don't drink, I don't gamble, chase after status. I believe in three things: independence, honesty, and earning your place. Nothing was ever handed to me, and I never asked anyone to. I worked hard, I minded my business, I respected boundaries. I thought that was enough to live a life of dignity and mutual respect. But dignity doesn't mean much when you're the quiet one in a loud family. My father, David Carter, is a retired Navy man, disciplinarian, no nonsense. He wasn't cruel, just cold. He saw emotions as weakness. I can't remember the last time he said he was proud of me, or even called me just to check in. Everything with him was about strength, success, and not being a burden. Then there was my mother, Elaine. She was the kind of woman who made excuses for everyone, especially my younger brother, Jason. Where my father was hard, she was soft, but soft in a way that collapsed under pressure. She didn't stand up for herself, and she never stood up for me. But for Jason, she bent over backwards. Jason Carter, my younger brother by 5 years. 29, charming as hell, and completely unreliable. He could sell snow to an Eskimo. He had that fake charisma that made you want to trust him, until he emptied your wallet and disappeared. He's been in and out of rehab, therapy, recovery programs, always promising change, always falling back into the same black hole: gambling. The truth is, I stopped loaning him money years ago. He never paid it back, and every time I tried to draw the line, my parents made me feel like I was heartless, like I was the villain for not helping my own blood. But Jason didn't just make bad choices. He made them again and again, and then expected everyone else to clean up after him. Still, I kept my distance. I focused on my work, my house, my life. I figured if I stayed out of their mess, they'd stay out of mine. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. When I left for Sudan, I wasn't running away from anyone. I was going to do what I've always done: serve people who truly needed help. That mission was scheduled to last 6 months. 6 months of working in one of the hottest, harshest, most emotionally draining environments on Earth. But I didn't hesitate, because for me, purpose always came first. I was stationed in a region hit hard by flooding and food shortages. My job was to manage logistics for emergency shelters and clean water systems. I spent my days hauling supplies, fixing broken filtration units, coordinating local teams, and doing my best to bring some sort of order to places drowning in chaos. It was hard. The kind of hard that pushes you mentally and physically, but also humbles you. There were nights I came back to the base so tired I couldn't even eat. My body ached, my boots were ruined, and I hadn't had a proper shower in days. But still, I slept with peace in my heart, because I believed everything back home was fine. I believed my family, no matter how complicated, was at least holding things together. I sent them updates when I could. Spotty internet, grainy WhatsApp calls. Every once in a while, I'd get a quick message from my mom asking how I was doing. I'd reply with photos of the kids I'd met, the systems we'd built, and sometimes just a tired smile that said, "I'm okay." I didn't know that while I was giving people clean water in Sudan, my family was busy drowning in Jason's mess. Jason had done it again. He had borrowed money, a lot of it, from people you don't borrow from unless you've run out of every other option. Loan sharks, dangerous ones. The kind who don't send emails. They send warnings, loud ones. Broken windows, flat tires, men showing up at your door in silence, with baseball bats and fake smiles. It wasn't just gambling this time. It was reckless, high-stakes poker in underground circles. Thousands lost in a single night. Thousands more borrowed to try again. My parents panicked, and like they always did, instead of holding Jason accountable, they started looking for someone else to pay the price. That someone was me. Because I wasn't home. Because I wasn't around to say no. Because in their minds I could afford to help. I mean, what's one house to a man who's never home anyway? That's probably how they justified it. They didn't even think twice. They didn't call. They didn't ask. They just acted. They contacted a real estate agent. They told her they were authorized to sell the beach house. Told her I had agreed. Faked my signature. Signed documents they had no right to even touch. And when I think about that now, the part that still stings the most isn't even the betrayal. It's the calm they must have had while doing it, like it was just another favor for their favorite son. Back in Sudan, I had no idea what was happening. I was waking up before sunrise, checking off supply lists, chasing after lost shipments in trucks with no brakes. I was trying to get medicine through checkpoints while my family, my own blood, was gutting the one place in the world that I had called mine. They were digging a hole for Jason and burying my name in it. I trusted them to keep an eye on my home. I asked them to forward my mail, maybe make sure the yard didn't overgrow. I never imagined they'd treat it like a blank check. I never imagined they'd treat me like a bank account, silent, generous, and disposable. And what's worse, they didn't even hesitate. They didn't wait for me to return. They didn't think, maybe Michael will say no, because in their eyes I was safe, responsible, and too far away to stop it. But what they didn't know, what they never knew, was that I had been keeping records. Quietly. Legally. Strategically. I wasn't just the son who worked overseas, I was the owner. And I had protected myself long before they ever knew I needed to. I still remember the exact moment I opened that email. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Sudan. Hot, dusty, the kind of dry heat that clings to your skin and drains the energy right out of you. I was sitting inside the logistics tent, sipping from a warm bottle of water after a long morning in the field. I had finally gotten a signal on my satellite connection and saw an email from my father. Subject line, quick update. It didn't seem urgent. My father was never a man of many words, so I didn't expect a heartfelt message. But what I opened, it wasn't just cold. It was surgical, emotionless. Michael, we sold the beach house. Jason needed help. You weren't using it anyway. That was it. No, how are you? No, we're sorry. No explanation. Just a decision. Final. Closed. Done. At first, I thought I had read it wrong. My eyes kept going back to that one line. You weren't using it anyway. I stared at it for what felt like minutes, frozen. My hand gripped the edge of the metal table as my heart started to pound. It felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me, and I hadn't even been standing. They sold my home. My peace. My escape. They sold it like it meant nothing. Like it was a coat in a closet no one wore anymore. I imagined them, sitting around the dinner table, making that decision. Probably sipping coffee. Probably calm. Probably thinking they were doing the right thing. As if my silence over the years had given them permission. As if not asking them for anything somehow meant they owned everything I had. I kept reading that sentence over and over. Jason needed help. Of course he did. Jason always needed help. And somehow, I was always the one expected to carry the weight. But this wasn't just about money. This wasn't a loan. This wasn't another favor they'd later sweep under the rug. This was my property. My name on the title. My blood, sweat, and sanity poured into every inch of that house. It had taken me 8 years to build that home, brick by brick, and they gave it away like a hand-me-down. And what hit me the hardest was that they didn't even call. Not even a single conversation, no heads up, no hesitation, just a cold email dropped into my inbox thousands of miles away, as if I didn't matter, as if I was too distant to care, too responsible to complain. My hands were shaking as I closed the laptop. I sat there, staring at nothing, and in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not panic, something colder, something quieter. Silence. They thought I would explode. That I'd call and scream, beg them to undo it, try to reason with them like I had in the past. That I'd be the older brother again, the calm one. But this time, I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't send a single message, because I knew something they didn't. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought I was powerless. But they didn't know I had set things up a long time ago. Quietly, legally, precisely. They thought they'd buried me. But they didn't realize I was holding the shovel the whole time. There's something about betrayal that sharpens your mind. The moment I read that email, cold, casual, dismissive, I knew I couldn't respond emotionally. I couldn't react the way they expected. No calls, no confrontations, not yet. I had to be smarter than them. I had to be quiet, calm, calculated, because I knew something they didn't. I had protected myself years ago, quietly, legally, for this exact kind of situation. See, this wasn't the first time my family had crossed boundaries. Years back, there was another incident, not as big but enough to make me cautious. Jason had used my name to secure a personal loan without my knowledge. When I confronted my parents, they brushed it off like it was a mistake. A misunderstanding. My father said, "Family handles things internally." My mother cried, said Jason was going through a phase. I let it go, but that moment taught me something. Never leave anything you love unguarded. So I took action. I moved the beach house, my sanctuary, into a private trust, in my name only. It wasn't complicated, but it was thorough. I worked with a real estate attorney to ensure that even if someone tried to sell the property, they couldn't do it without my explicit, notarized signature. I removed any old power of attorney privileges my parents once had. Privileges I'd granted years ago when I was too naive to think they'd misuse them. And I didn't tell them. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't want them to try and undo it. I needed peace of mind, not permission. So when I read that email, when they proudly declared they had sold the house to help Jason, I didn't get angry. I got curious. Curious about how far they had gone. Curious about how they thought they could get away with it. Because unless someone forged a signature, my signature, that sale was illegal. I cut my mission short. I packed my things and got on the first available flight back to California. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Not my parents, not my brother. I didn't even tell the nonprofit that sent me out. I just boarded that plane and came home with silence in my heart and fire in my gut. Landing in LAX felt different. It wasn't relief I felt. It was clarity. I rented a car and drove straight to the county records office. I didn't go home. I didn't stop for food. I didn't check into a hotel. I needed proof. I needed documentation. I needed to know what they had done, and more importantly, what they couldn't do. The clerk at the records office was helpful, but even she looked confused when I asked to pull recent transaction history on my beach house. She said, "It shows the original trust is active. No legal sale has been recorded." I asked her to print everything, every deed, every signature, every stamp, and there it was. My name and only my name on every page. The trust was still intact. The legal title had never changed hands. The county had no record of a valid transaction, no sale, no transfer, nothing official, which meant whatever my parents and Jason had done, it wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. They had faked something. Somewhere, somehow, a forged document existed. And that was going to be their downfall. Because they didn't just sell my house. They sold a lie. They handed over something that didn't belong to them. And now, they were standing on a cliff they didn't even know was crumbling beneath their feet. That's when I knew. I wasn't just going to reclaim my house. I was going to reclaim my dignity. And I was going to do it by the book. Slowly, legally, and publicly. I walked into the local police department the morning after I visited the courthouse. The air smelled like stale coffee and impatience. A few officers stood around talking quietly while one sat behind the front desk, typing like she had all the time in the world. I stepped up and calmly said, "I need to file a report for real estate fraud." That got her attention. She raised an eyebrow, asked me to take a seat, and said someone would be with me shortly. I waited. 5 minutes, then 10. Finally, a detective walked out. Late 40s, suit a little wrinkled, badge clipped to his belt. He looked like a man who'd seen a lot of lies and didn't believe much until you put it in black and white. His name was Detective Harris. We sat in a small interview room, just 4 walls, a table, and a cheap fan that squeaked as it turned. He asked me what happened. I told him everything. The email, the forged sale, the trust deed, and how my parents sold a house they never legally owned. At first, he listened with that usual cop expression, polite but skeptical. I could see it in his eyes. He probably thought I was exaggerating, or worse, that this was just a messy family feud that didn't belong on a police report. Then I slid the folder across the table. Deed records, trust documentation, copies of revoked power of attorney forms, and most importantly, my signature on file compared with the forged one used to authorize the supposed sale. He flipped through the pages slowly. His fingers paused on the notarized trust, then again on the forged sale agreement I had retrieved from the listing office. He looked at both signatures and then looked at me. "You didn't sign this." I shook my head. "No, sir, I did not." Something changed in his tone after that. He leaned forward and asked me a new question, a serious one. "Do you have any idea who signed this?" I answered honestly. It had to be one of my parents or my brother, maybe all 3. That's when the mood shifted. He stood up, told me to wait there, and disappeared with the folder. 20 minutes later, he came back with another officer, this one introduced as Officer Langston from the Real Estate Crimes Division. Apparently, forged home sales weren't just rare. They were big news in a place like Santa Barbara, where property meant power. Langston didn't waste time. He asked for a written statement. I gave it. Then he asked if I had proof of when I was out of the country. I did. Plane tickets, embassy documents, work visa stamps, all showing I was in Sudan during the supposed date of sale. My alibi was airtight. That's when they said it. "You might want to lawyer up. This is forgery, identity theft, and possible conspiracy to commit fraud. This is bigger than a family dispute." Hearing those words felt like both relief and pain. Relief because someone was finally treating this like the serious crime it was. Pain because those words, conspiracy to commit fraud, were now being used about my own parents. The people who raised me. The people who told me to always do the right thing. But they didn't just break the law. They broke trust. And trust, once shattered, doesn't grow back. It stays cracked, no matter how you try to glue it together. The police opened an investigation. They subpoenaed the real estate office, froze the transaction temporarily, and flagged the property for review. And while all that was happening behind closed doors, I waited in silence. I didn't reach out to my parents. I didn't tell them I was back. I didn't even tell them I knew. Because I wanted the truth to come crashing down on them the same way it had hit me. And the moment that real estate agent made that call, everything they tried to hide would be laid bare. After filing the police report and handing over everything I had, I knew the wheels of justice had started turning. But if you've ever dealt with legal systems, you know one thing. They move slow. And I wasn't patient anymore. I needed to see the look on their faces, the moment when they realized their perfect little plan was falling apart. That's when I decided to make a call of my own. I picked up my phone and dialed the real estate agency that handled the supposed sale. Their name had been listed in the county's transaction records, a small firm, nothing flashy, just enough to move local properties without raising eyebrows. I didn't tell them who I was, not right away. I simply posed as a curious buyer who had seen the beach house listing recently and wanted more information. The receptionist transferred me to the listing agent, Linda Chavez. Her voice was warm, cheerful, the kind of voice that probably smiled through the phone. I told her I had questions about a property that had been listed a few weeks ago, the beach house near Montecito. There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh, that one's been taken off the market. The sale went through quickly. Nice couple bought it. Cash deal, if I remember correctly." I took a deep breath, then shifted my tone. "Linda," I said, "this is going to sound strange, but I need you to listen carefully. My name is Michael Carter. I'm the legal owner of that property, and I never authorized a sale." There was a long silence, the kind that's louder than any scream. Then she said, "Wait, you're Michael Carter? The owner? But your father, the documents, we were told." I interrupted gently. "I have the deed, the trust, all legal proof. I never gave anyone permission to sell. I've reported it to the police, but I need to ask you something important. Who signed the documents? Who told you they had authority?" Linda's voice dropped. "Your parents. I met with your father in person. Your mother signed the closing paperwork. Your brother was there too. They all told me you were overseas and had left them in charge. I even asked about a power of attorney. They said it had been notarized." I could hear the unease in her voice now, the confusion, the slow realization that she had been dragged into a fraud. I didn't blame her. Not yet. I knew how charming my family could be when they wanted something. I knew how confident my father sounded when he spoke like a man who'd never been questioned. Then Linda said something that made everything worth it. "Michael, I'm going to call them. Right now. They need to know." I didn't stop her. I didn't warn her. I just said, "Okay, call me back after." I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring out the window at nothing in particular. My chest tight, not with fear, but anticipation. Because I knew what that phone call was going to do. It was going to crack the mirror they'd been hiding behind. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Linda. Her voice was different this time, shaken, careful. "Michael, I just spoke to your father." I waited. She continued. I said, "Hi, Mr. Carter. I just spoke with Michael Carter, the actual owner of the house." And then, silence. She said there was nothing on the other end of the line. No defense, no explanation, just pure, stunned silence. She tried to speak with my mother. Same thing. No words. Just awkward breathing and a long pause before she said, "We'll get back to you." But they didn't. They didn't call back. They didn't follow up. Because they knew. They knew it was over. That moment, that silence was louder than any fight we could have had. Because for the first time, they weren't in control. For the first time, they were the ones caught in a lie they couldn't explain. And the one person they thought would stay quiet wasn't quiet anymore. There's a silence that comes before war. Not loud, not violent, just a quiet certainty that the truth is about to burn through every lie in the room. That's exactly how I felt the morning I arranged the meeting. I chose a quiet, neutral location, a small private conference room at a business suite near the courthouse. No distractions, just a table, 4 chairs, and a thick folder that would speak louder than I ever could. I told them to meet me at 11 a.m. sharp. No context, no warning, just a message that read, "We need to talk, in person." I knew they'd come. Curiosity would pull them in. Guilt would keep them from saying no. Sure enough, at exactly 11:03, they walked in. My father entered first, David Carter. Still stiff in his posture, still pretending to be in control. My mother followed, avoiding my eyes, clutching her purse like it might shield her from what was coming. And then came Jason. Slow, smug, with that fake confidence he wore like cologne. He didn't even sit properly. He leaned back like he was watching a show he'd already seen the ending of. I sat across from them, calm, silent. I didn't say hello, didn't ask how they were. I just reached into my bag and placed 3 things on the table. The property deed, the trust document, and the forged sale agreement. I slid them across the smooth surface like playing cards. Their eyes dropped to the papers. I watched as their expressions shifted, confusion, then tension, then something they hadn't felt in years when dealing with me, fear. My father tried to speak first. "Michael, we didn't mean." I held up a hand. "Don't." He closed his mouth. My mother looked like she wanted to cry. Jason just scoffed. "It's just a house," he said under his breath. And that's when I lost it, not with shouting, but with truth. "No, Jason, it wasn't just a house. It was my peace, my life's work, and you used it like a casino chip." He rolled his eyes. "Dad said you weren't using it." I turned to my father. "And you believed you had the right? You knew I was out of the country. You knew I had moved everything into a trust. You knew you didn't own a single piece of that property." My father leaned forward, trying to reclaim authority. "We were trying to protect your brother. He was in danger. From himself," I snapped. "You sold your dignity to protect someone who wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire, and you dragged Mom into it. You forged signatures, lied to a real estate agency, all for someone who would sell you out for a scratch-off ticket." My mother finally whispered, "I didn't know it would go this far." I looked straight at her. "You always say that, every time, and still, you help him bury me." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't forge anything. That was Dad." "That's enough," I said coldly. "You're not going to start eating each other now. You made this mess together. You can sit in it together." Just then, the door opened. Officer Langston stepped in, dressed in plain clothes, badge on his hip. Their eyes widened. My father stood. "You brought the police?" "No," I said. "I brought the truth, and the law just happens to be standing next to it." Langston nodded toward them. "We have questions. I suggest you all come quietly." The room was still. My father sat back down. Jason muttered something under his breath and stared at the floor. My mother just looked at me, but I didn't look back. That day wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. It was about watching people who thought they'd never be questioned finally face consequences. And as they walked out of that room, not as parents, not as a brother, but as suspects, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. People like my family, especially my father, they never think they'll face consequences. They think reputation will shield them, that no one will dare hold them accountable because they wear the label of parent or provider. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't the scared little kid anymore. I was done letting silence protect them. The morning after the confrontation, I met with my attorney, a sharp, relentless woman named Evelyn Grace. She didn't waste words. She reviewed the documents, took one look at the forged signature, and said flatly, "This is real estate fraud. They're in serious legal trouble." And then she did something I had waited months to see happen. She filed formal charges. Real estate fraud, forgery, financial exploitation, not just against my parents, but against Jason too. The law didn't care that we shared blood, and neither did I anymore. But we didn't stop there. Evelyn filed a lawsuit not only against my family, but also against the buyers, the couple who purchased the house. Now, to be fair, they may not have known the sale was fraudulent. But legally, that didn't matter. If a transaction is based on forged documents, it doesn't hold up. Period. We requested an emergency injunction to freeze the sale and block any further transfer of the property. The judge reviewed the evidence and granted it almost immediately. Just like that, the house was legally reclaimed, the couple was forced to vacate, and my home was mine again. The fallout was fast and brutal. Jason's accounts, what little he had left, were frozen. Credit cards suspended, anything connected to his name flagged for investigation. And while he tried to blame everyone else, the law didn't care about his excuses. He wasn't just a gambling addict now. He was a liability. As for my parents, they were issued a restraining order. They were barred from approaching my home or contacting me directly. For the first time, the people who always crossed my boundaries were being forced to respect them, by law. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was necessary. And yet, I didn't want the beach house to just be a reminder of pain. I wanted to turn it into something better. So, I took a part of it, the guest wing, and donated it to a local nonprofit that helps recovering addicts. A safe, quiet place where people trying to escape the grip of addiction could find shelter and hope. But there was one rule I added to the agreement. One very specific condition, written in bold at the bottom of the contract. Jason Carter is permanently banned from entering this property under any circumstance. Some might call that petty. I call it peace of mind. Because I wanted to help people? I still do. But not the ones who weaponized my kindness. Not the ones who looked me in the eye while they robbed me blind. So now my house stands not just as my personal peace, but as a place where others can heal. A place where silence is not betrayal, but peace. A place my brother and the people who chose him over me will never enter again. And the best part? They never saw it coming. I never yelled. I never showed up to their doorstep. I never even called. Instead, I picked up a pen and wrote the last thing I would ever say to them. The letter wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry, just honest. I was never angry about the house. I was angry that you thought I was disposable, that you believed I wouldn't fight for what I built. But now, I've removed you from my life, just like you removed my name from yours. I signed it without bitterness. I folded it neatly, sealed it, and left it with my lawyer. Then I blocked their numbers, emails, everything. I didn't do it to punish them. I did it to protect myself. Some people don't belong in your peace, even if they share your blood. I got the house back, but more importantly, I got my silence back. A clean silence, one that isn't filled with betrayal or waiting for the next disappointment. The scars are still there, but now they remind me of strength. And sometimes, that's the only closure we really need. Looking back now, I realize it was never just about the house. It was about what it represented. Peace, effort, independence. And they tried to take all of that away without a second thought. But I didn't let them. Not with anger, not with revenge. I let the truth do the heavy lifting. I let the law speak louder than my emotions. And in the end, I didn't just reclaim my home, I reclaimed myself. There's something powerful in walking away with your dignity intact, in choosing silence over chaos, clarity over confrontation. To anyone out there who's been betrayed by the people closest to you, I want to say this. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting. It's showing them what your life looks like without them, and letting the silence haunt them more than any words ever could. And for me, that silence is peace. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever had to rebuild from the wreckage of someone else's choices, then this story was for you. Because sometimes, the quiet ones carry the heaviest stories. And when they finally speak, the whole room listens. So if this hit you in the heart, subscribe to this channel, stick around, because the next story, it's even deeper. And you won't want to miss it.